Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kim Holmes from SMG. Welcome to today's webinar on practical stress management. I'm now going to hand it over to Christine Thompson, our psychologist, who will take you through today's webinar.
Thank you, Kim. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Get Healthy at Work webinar series co-hosted by SMG Health. My name is Christine Thompson, and today I'll be presenting on practical stress management. As a psychologist, I think it's really important that we start to really think about being proactive and preventative. And I think today will be an opportunity to hopefully get some new hot tips that you can use on the job or at home or as you go about your work-life business. Should you have any questions in today's session, please pop them along in the chat box and Kim will be moderating and having a look at the end of the session and we can answer those questions then. Or please get in touch with us via email. Okay, let's get settled. Let's get positioned and situated, anchored in our furniture today. Whether you're at home or whether you're on site at work, let's take a lovely, big, deep breath in and a nice, slow breath out. Some shoulder rolls and just get right settled into our furniture, being really present for what we're going to be working on today. In this module, we'll be having a look at the importance and benefits of a healthy workplace. We'll look at some of the details about how the Get Healthy at Work program can suit you. We'll also look at the support available for you to deliver some of these hot tips in your workplace and where to find some of the information and tools to help. Most specifically, we'll be looking at stress, how to define stress, what it looks like, and how it impacts you. We think that if we're able to support people as clinicians around how insightful, how aware they are of stress impacting their body, then they're going to be able to recognize those signs and symptoms of stress and pressure and then be able to do something about it. Understanding some of the different types of stress can also be helpful. And lastly, I'll be leaving you with some strategies around mindfulness, what the definition might be, how you can do it on the job, but also some positive self-talk. So checking in with ourselves and having a look at some of the things we say to ourselves. Are they fair? Are they compassionate? And perhaps how you might be able to reset that tone and style of speaking to ourselves internally. And lastly, I'll be leaving you with some positive emotional aspects of the gratitude exercise program. So how you can record 2 things that work well for you or even a few more around gratitude journaling. All right, let's have a look at the impact of stress and some of the early warning signs. We all feel stress from time to time. It's normal and it's an expected part of our lives. But when we react in different ways, it sometimes puts stress and pressure on our body from a holistic point of view. What stresses one person may not stress another out. We all have different tipping points, but sometimes stress is too intense, too prolonged, and it can take a toll on our bodies. What's your experience of reacting to stress, and how do you know that you're stressed? We think your body will let you know. And sometimes part of that experiencing of the stressful situation might even impact us through psychological ways, physical ways, emotional ways, and behavioural signs and symptoms. From a psychological point of view, we sometimes start to think about that scenario, reliving perhaps the stressor or the particular event. We might even have some confusion and difficulty making decisions, or perhaps waxing and waning and not being able to make a decision at all. We might show signs of reduced motivation, perhaps avoiding our usual routines of life, and then changing some of our thinking styles. It might be catastrophizing. We might be blowing things out of proportion. Also, there's an impact perhaps on our own personality around taking things really personal, that we sometimes become quite sensitive there. And assuming the worst. Again, thinking about those assumptions and perhaps seeing them bigger than what they really are and catastrophizing. From a physical point of view, some of the impact that stress has on our body might even be in that fight, flight, freeze response, which is an adrenal response starting with a rapid heart rate, sweating, perhaps trembling or feeling quite chilly, or maybe feeling a bit tingly in our extremities because all the blood is rushing to the core of the body. That fight, flight, freeze response is a survival mechanism for us to get out of a tricky place, or run up a laneway if someone's chasing us, or fight or fly, or even freeze and stand really still. This biochemical impact is huge on the body. It impacts our muscles, our hemoglobin, the way we have a clotting factor. So our body is really looking after the core of our entire organs and making sure that we are in our peak fitness state. But over the longer period of a day, this type of biochemical rate has a huge impact on the muscles, on the heart rate, on the blood pressure, and then that impact starts to kind of move into a muscle soreness and even sleep disturbance. Sometimes we start to feel that adrenaline being part of our day in a whole 24-hour period. It's really important for us to diffuse some of those biochemicals. Some of the signs emotionally that we might be feeling quite emotional in terms of our soothing of our emotional regulation may be really difficult to do through shock or crying or irritability, or even just feeling quite snappy. Those types of emotional outbursts could be signs that perhaps we're not coping with the stress and pressure in our life. From a behavioural point of view, we may even see people withdraw from others, no longer engaging actively in their meetings at work, or perhaps just feeling quite flat in the way they're presenting. That shows perhaps an increased reactivity, or maybe even they're not usually attending to their typical routines in their life. They may have an increase or a decrease in eating. They might even be self-soothing with substances like alcohol and other drugs. When we think about stress, we think about the actual tone of it is the idea being that eustress is the positive stress, and we actually need to have stress in our life. So there's a wonderful quote by Dr. Alan Elkin: stress is like a violin string. If there is no tension, there's no music. But if the string is too tight, it will break. So you want to find the right level of tension for you. And that level lets you make harmony in your life. And when we think of this analogy, we know that with tension and pressure, we wouldn't hear beautiful violin music. So just like in our own lives, we'll need a level of tension, or what we think of as positive stress or eustress, to get us up and out to meet our usual needs, our basic needs, and get some of those goals met as well. So for example, I often think of a work deadline when I think of eustress. In our roles, there's certain goals that we need to meet each day. This helps us stay on track, helps us meet our KPIs, contribute to our team and organisation missions and purposes. Under a slight time pressure, we can work steadily through the day and focus and meet that deadline in time. But we might need to organise ourselves carefully, watch the clock, plan carefully, and sometimes seek assistance and feedback from others. This tension or pressure assists us to meet this work goal and gain and increase satisfaction in our lives. So we know we need some kind of tension, some kind of pressure to get ourselves up and running. However, there is a tipping point for this as well. So some stress is good and helpful, as we've discussed, just to get our daily needs met and to reach that optimum performance. But too much or too little can have the adverse effects. When we look at this particular graphic, we can see that too little pressure is almost the drone zone, or when we're underloaded and we're just not quite getting things done. When we start to really meet some of our goals, and we can see here in this where our performance starts to peak. We get up there and we're actually at that optimal level of pressure. We have that balance just right, a bit like the violin. However, if we keep going and push ourselves too far in terms of stress and our performance, we get past that tipping point. And for each one of us, we have a slightly different tipping point. then we can end up in this other red zone where we become quite distressed. People's tipping point increases as their level of ability to control how they're doing things increases. So a high demand, low control is a bad situation for most humans. And the trick here is to recognise when you've gone past your tipping point and what that looks like. When we go too far, we get to the point where we might even burn out or even break down. We're no longer performing at our optimum. We're feeling too stressed, too overwhelmed with the demands, and our actual quality and productivity in the workplace or at home goes down. Some of the techniques to manage stress, and I think as a psychologist working in this area for a bit over 22 years, for me, I often will start to assess people to try and find what some of their strengths already are. And a lot of people have a number of hobbies and a number of wellbeing routines that they're already attending to. And what might be really helpful to do is to suggest perhaps that we build on those hobbies or those types of activities and routines. But maybe we might just make sure they're scheduled in, that they're going to happen. You might want to think of a list of hobbies that you enjoy. They could be active hobbies or they could be relaxing ones. Perhaps some that take you away where you lose all sense of time and space and you get into that flow state. They could be building things, jigsaw puzzles, gardening, having a nice relaxing bubble bath, quiet reading, or even some exercise-based activities like walking, playing in a team sport, or even perhaps relaxing with friends by having a dinner party or cooking for each other, listening to music, exercise, and yoga. What we know is that the more activities we have where we're engaging and moving and shifting our body and catching up with other people, the more opportunities we have for our body just to sort of relax and diffuse some of that fight, flight, freeze response, some of those corticosteroids that might be hanging around after a particularly stressful day. This gives the body an opportunity to relax, to de-stress, for you to calm your mind, and how you're engaging with your life could be even more quality driven. The next part, I guess, would be to really think about maybe extending our stress management technique to perhaps social connection. Investing in relationships in the workplace and at home has been shown to be really, really helpful in terms of distracting us from our stressful situations, but also soothing us. The people that love us and care about us are really helpful people. They can be that type of person where we might debrief with, we might go for a power walk around our neighbourhood and have a chat about a particular movie that we might have seen. These types of engaging activities allow our bodies to think and feel and react in different ways. The next idea might be to perhaps do some gratitude journaling. And when we think about that, we think of the idea of seeing the silver linings that might be around in your life. And the thought is that perhaps we're born with a bit of a negative bias so that we survive and we problem solve. And we're not ignoring that negative bias or what's happening there and pretending those things aren't there. But there is some research to suggest that perhaps if we're able to acknowledge the positives around us and practice gratitude, and the thinking could be writing 2 things down each day, or even having a conversation at the beginning of a meeting on a Monday, where you might start the ball rolling by suggesting what worked well for you over the weekend, or at the dinner table, what worked well today. You could even write them down in a diary before you go to bed, 2 or 3 things that you're grateful for that day. Another way of diffusing some of the stressful situations could be just general journaling. 1 page of just general comments about how the day went. Sometimes we can do that in a written way, writing things, or we might even do a visual journal where we take photos and save it in a bit of a folder on our phones or computer, that type of thing. So each day there might be a photo of what happened in that day that you can remember as a signal of what's going on. This allows us to express ourselves and get these things off our chest. Next, perhaps some visualization. We think of this as creative visualization. And I sometimes suggest to people to have a fabulous photo near their computer desk or perhaps on their phone, looking at this photo and remembering that nice holiday. Perhaps it might be either a holiday in the past or a holiday that you're hoping to have. Anchor yourself in that visualization. What would it feel like? What would it smell like? What would the beach feel like? What could you hear? So when we go into that particular visualization, we're allowing ourselves to have a brief holiday from where we are in reality, but we're exploring the creativity of it, but also the idea that we're able to kind of relax and breathe by staring at this beautiful picture. So visualization could be something that's more formal, so looking at a picture, or you might even close your eyes and visualize the holiday yourself, or perhaps visualize a fabulous activity that you're going to be doing on the weekend with family or friends. That type of visualization allows us to just get in touch with our breath, anchoring ourselves to where we are, but also gets us working in the present moment. And we know that when we're in the present moment, we're not worried too much about what happened in the past, because we know we can't go back and change that. And when we're in the present moment, we're anchored and we're in control. We're able to plan for the future, but we know that there's no guarantees around what's going to happen. So when we think about this, we can add other components like meditation and mindfulness meditation. There's lots of different ways of doing that, whether it be through a guided meditation with headphones, where we listen to a person giving us a full body scan, and we can do those from 2 minutes through to 10 minutes. Or we could simply just meditate by staring at something in front of us, a candle, a picture, out the window. Or I sometimes try and encourage people to have that lovely cup of tea and use the tea as a meditation, feeling the warmth of the cup, noticing the steam, getting our senses involved by anchoring ourselves into the cup, smelling the tea, and maybe clearing our mind, just gently breathing in and out. So let's have a bit of a deep dive into some of these practices, beginning with our mindfulness practice. Mindfulness is about being in the present, as I said, but it's also about engaging our senses in the present, anchoring ourselves. It's the practice of paying attention to the present moment in an intentional way. What we want to do is notice what's going on in our body, in our breath, with our senses, in a non-judgmental way. So we want to be kind to ourselves. We can choose where to focus, either closing our eyes or focusing in on one particular thing. We also want to add an attitude of openness, an attitude of curiosity, acceptance, wisdom, and kindness. So we want to also observe our thoughts and emotions and try and practice that non-attachment. For example, let's spend the next 2 minutes trying not to think of an elephant in a strawberry patch. Let's just give that a try. How did you go? We know that what we resist persists. Our brain struggles sometimes to let go of that image. It's like a thinking machine. And when we patiently bring it back to focus on the breath, and maybe even using our senses, what can we hear? What can we smell? Where is our body connected to the furniture? Then we're able to gently guide our mind back. So when I threw in there, trying not to think about an elephant in a strawberry patch, the brain just hooks onto that image, doesn't it? What we resist persists. So if we can try and gently just be kind to ourselves and just gently bring the mind back to that blank canvas. And as it continues on, because it's going to want to go to the next thought and the next thought, because it's a thinking machine, without judgment, without being negative, we just gently bring it back. There's a number of benefits of mindfulness. We had a good look at some of the studies over the years in terms of some of the things that it can do for us. And in the last 10, 15 years in particular, the research has really broadened out. Studies have shown that we can reduce and let go of the impact of stressful thoughts and feelings. I think of it as a brain training opportunity where we're flexing our brain and our practice to be able to gently self-soothe. So once we learn how to look after our mind and be kind to ourselves and anchor into that present moment, then we can use these strategies in an everyday fashion. When we're able to soothe ourselves using a mindfulness practice, then we can soothe ourselves in a stressful situation. And this becomes, just like going to the gym, a particular practice where we're stretching our muscles here. We can also gain that perspective. We can allow ourselves just to slow things down a little bit and just see what else is going on in the situation. Other studies, functional MRI scan studies, have actually shown that we can improve mood, focus, concentration, but also have a bit more balance in our life and less emotional volatility. So in terms of that emotional regulation, a practice of mindfulness over 21 days, each day for about 5 minutes or so, has been shown to actually really be able to manage our mood and be able to regulate ourselves a little bit better. I think because we're able to recognise what's happening in the body. Where might the tension be? Are we breathing in a big, deep yoga breath rather than those short, sharp, fight-flight breaths from the top? We can also experience more calm and peacefulness and lessen some of our anxiety. So you might want to start a mindfulness practice today, and you can check in and see how you're going by even writing it down in your journal. There's a way of training our brain, this idea, to be able to use our breath and senses to calm the mind and gently diffuse the signs of stress and pressure. This is a practice. And some of the apps that might be helpful that we like to recommend at SMG Health are Smiling Mind, Insight Timer, Calm, Headspace, and a new one that I've just had a look at recently is Breathe, B-R-E-E-T-H. So I encourage you to have a look at which app suits you. Some of them, there might be a cost involved and others are free. Positive self-talk. It might seem obvious, but how we speak to ourselves internally sets the theme for how we might be thinking, feeling, and reacting in our everyday lives. Our self-talk is really important to consider. We probably need to check in with the self-talk. How are we speaking to ourselves? Is it fair? Is it positive? Is it rational? And importantly, are we being compassionate? So take some time to have a little think about what might be helpful in terms of the self-talk statements for you. You might want to write them down. These positive affirmations can be really helpful to say to ourselves internally. Pop them on your phone or put them on a post-it note somewhere near your desk. Some of the examples might be, I can do this. I'm happy and at peace. I'm strong and capable of doing this. Try and have a pre-preparation, perhaps before a stressful event or a meeting or a challenging situation, by having a look in the mirror, checking how you're talking to yourself, perhaps internally, what's that monologue sound like, and then perhaps say out loud a couple of really nice, positive affirmations, preparing yourself, taking a big, deep breath, and then moving into the meeting. Let's dive into gratitude. When we're stressed, it's really hard sometimes to see the positives in our lives. If we're overwhelmed or we're negative, we really struggle sometimes to see that silver lining. This art of noticing what we're grateful for can assist us in having increased levels of empathy for others, but also some self-compassion for ourselves. So maybe even focusing on what else is going on around you, or what silver linings have you noticed in your day. Having gratitude for what you have can actually help you feel happier and less stressed. But more importantly, what you're doing is starting to see the glass half full. You're starting to talk the positive or optimistic talk. And when we start to see some of this positivity around us, we'll relive the day and work out which things we notice that we're grateful for. We actually get another biochemical injection, I guess, of dopamine in our systems because we're reliving it and having another look at it. And that starts to get the ball rolling around our kindness and compassion. So you might want to write down a couple of things before you go to bed. What am I grateful for today? Was it that lovely cup of tea in the sun? Or was it the fact that you got up a half an hour earlier and you're able to do some mindfulness meditation? Or you might even want to do a thorough exercise in gratitude journaling by writing out your gratitude list and having that somewhere physical in your room or your house. What are the 20 things in your life that you're grateful for? This type of exercise can be really helpful just to boost ourselves in terms of our capacity to see these observations of positivity, but also allow us to generate empathy and compassion. Some of the strategies to minimise the negative effects of stress can be varied. And as I said at the beginning, it's different for each one of us. If you can't change the current environment that you're in or that stressor that you're managing, then you might be able to engage in some of these other things that you can take control of. And when we bring that locus of control back to us, then we can start to see in the present moment that we have some capacity to manage how we're thinking and feeling, how we're engaging with our positive well-being strategies around us, whether we're able to feel comfortable to reach out and ask for assistance. So just for example, talking and catching up with friends or colleagues, venting or diffusing some of our frustrations can be a helpful way of just getting some of that off our chest. Exercise is really helpful as well as our capacity to see the lighter things in life. Laughing or being able to watch a comedy show one night a week so that it's a lighter way of engaging with the world, perhaps less doom scrolling on our social media. Meditation and mindfulness is also, as I said before, could be a really quick way of just resetting how you're seeing the world around you, but also how you're connecting with that from your own present moment. Checking in with your breath and remembering to take lovely, big, deep breaths are really important to do as well. Good nutrition. Try and get some of those extra vegetables and fruits in your diet, and remember to hydrate. I think sometimes we forget to drink water throughout the day and we wonder why we might feel tense or even have a bit of a tension headache. Taking a break from our digital technology is also really helpful. Every 50 minutes or so, if you can, just to get a bit 5 minutes away from the computer, take a lovely big deep breath, get that snack or hydrate or cup of tea so that you feel that you're ready to get back into a game. Looking to the distance and allowing our eyes to just rest a little bit, as well as scheduling some of these activities that you might want to enjoy. Put them in your diary so that they do happen. And if we want to be accountable, grab a friend and do some of these fun things together. A hobby together, or a walk around the neighbourhood together, or a catch up for coffee, so that you can have things to look forward to. But sometimes when we take a friend with us, we actually get it done. All right. I have reached the conclusion of our session today, so I'm really keen just to kind of remind you that if you have any questions at all, please pop them into the chat box. Kim, is there any questions that have popped up for us today?
Hi, Christine. There's a couple of questions similar, and I need to get back to the attendees on this through SMG and Get Healthy at Work. They're after the slide decks and the notes and the graphics, if they could get emailed these, because they said they're very, very helpful. So I'm sure there is something we can get back to them about, and definitely moving forward, they're particularly interested in the graphics. So it's a great, I guess, resource and tool for the attendees. So we'll definitely look into that and get back to everybody this afternoon. But in terms of specific questions, I think that is it. But I think it was very informative from that perspective anyway.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think these would be handy hot tips for team leaders and managers to be able to talk to their teams about. So perhaps we can help out with connecting them up with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it will be recorded as well. So yeah, we'll definitely get back to the participants very soon regarding that.
No worries. All right, well, if there's no more questions, Kim, then I might finish off and wish everyone a terrific afternoon and hope they have an opportunity to put a couple of these techniques into their own schedule and take good care of yourselves and those around you. So thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, everybody, for attending.